Hello, my name is Zuisei. Welcome to the Ocean Mind Sangha. It's not always easy to speak about what zazen is, seated meditation. But I think the best way to think about it is that it is about being close to yourself, being close to your body, to your mind, to your life, to other people. And so in this way, zazen creates a container. It creates a space of stillness and silence so that we can see more clearly what is happening inside us, so that we can understand better what is happening around us. Because in Buddhism, we recognize that this seeming dichotomy between inside and outside does not really exist. That what is happening in here is what is happening outside. And that is why we place so much emphasis on meditation, why we practice it so much. And so if you are new to zazen, there are a couple of important points to keep in mind. And the first is posture. The Buddha said that there are 4 postures of meditation: sitting, standing, walking, and lying down. And zazen can be done in any of these postures, but we always recommend to begin with sitting because it will give you the kind of alertness that you need to be and to stay awake. And how you place your body matters. So if you choose to sit on the floor, what I'm sitting on is called a zabuton, that is the mat. And I am sitting on a cushion, a zafu. And the zafu is really used as a wedge. So I will sit on the first third of it so that my pelvis is tilted slightly, so that my knees have a chance of touching the mat. And if your knees don't, because you're not flexible yet, don't worry, just keep working on it. And over time, what you want is this very stable tripod, right? Where my sit bones are on the cushion and my knees are on the mat, because then I don't have to hold myself upright. You know, I can just let myself kind of rest through my plumb line and on the mat and on the ground, of course, that supports it. The cross-legged positions are you could say, the traditional postures for zazen. The first is full lotus, right? One foot is pretty high up on your thigh, other foot on the opposite thigh. And it's a very stable, very balanced posture. But it's very difficult, for most people to do and to do well. And so an alternative is half lotus, where one foot is placed flat on the mat and the other foot is up on your thigh. This still requires flexibility, especially of the hips. So if it is difficult, you can also do a quarter lotus, where your foot is just resting here on the crook of your calf, or place both feet flat in front of each other in what is called Burmese. Right? Here, my hips are a little bit wider, they're a little bit more open, but it's very stable, also very stable posture that's allowing me to sit forward a little bit and to keep myself upright. Because in all of these positions, you want your abdomen to be completely relaxed, right? So that you can breathe naturally, and you want your spine to be long. I imagine that I'm lengthening the back of my neck and that I'm pressing up against the ceiling or against the sky. And from there, I just let my shoulders relax and so that my spine is really long, right, and upright. If the cross-legged positions are difficult for you, you can also kneel. So you would take the cushion, place it on its side, and straddle it, right, with your knees on either side. Sometimes people like to just hang the backs of their feet off of the edge of the zabuton, so it takes some of the pressure off. And there are also seiza benches that are specially designed for this. They're tilted, so your legs would be in between the legs of the bench with a tilt facing forward. And this takes some of the weight off of your knees. It lifts your whole body a little bit. And then you can also always sit in a chair. Because the point of these traditional postures is that you're grounded, right? Because you're close to the ground, you feel grounded. And so, the advantage of sitting in a chair is that it is more comfortable, right? Most of us are not used to sitting on the floor for long periods of time. But the disadvantage of sitting in a chair is that it's more comfortable. Because then what happens is it's easy to associate it with being relaxed, too relaxed, and then you fall asleep. So if you're sitting in a chair, we recommend don't use the back of the chair, where you can place a cushion in between you and the back of the chair, or just sit without it, sit on a stool. What you want is for your spine, once again, to be upright and not leaning back. Right? So you really think of the whole posture of zazen as the marriage between alertness and relaxation. I've always thought that when you see somebody who's sitting well, they look immovable, like a mountain, like they have always sat there, like they will always sit there. There's a Luis Benteveo, these birds with it looks like almost a mask, and it seems he's a little annoyed. I've taken over the terrace. So, once you have placed your body in the seated position that you would like to use, then your hands are resting in your lap in what is called a zazen or cosmic mudra. Your leading hand, your writing hand, is placed down first with your other hand on top of it and your knuckles lightly touching. A mudra is a hand gesture that both creates and reflects a state of mind. And so you'll notice very quickly that by simply doing this, you're bringing all of your attention in to this point. The mudra is resting roughly about 3 fingers below the navel in what's called the hara. And it's really the center of your body, right? Your gut. And so you're bringing all of your attention hopefully down and out of your head and down to your gut, right? To your center, where your intuition and your direct seeing lives, if you will. And so you're just resting your hands. You don't have to hold them upright. You can just rest them on your lap. Sometimes I will place a blanket on my lap so that my hands don't slide down, pulling on my neck and shoulder muscles. And the mudra will reflect your state of mind, right? If you, at a certain point, notice that it's collapsed, your mind is probably also tired, collapsed in some way. If your thumbs are not touching, you might be lost in some kind of fantasy. And so the mudra is another way that you will know and that you will ensure that you're awake, that you're alert. Your mouth is closed, and there's a very, very light tuck of the chin, so that your head is actually directly over your spine, right? And not tilted forward, not looking up, not down, but just directly over your spine. I usually take a good swallow and place the tip of my tongue lightly against the roof of my mouth. This creates a vacuum that prevents me from having to swallow constantly, salivate, and then having to swallow. In zazen, your eyes are actually slightly open. So this sometimes takes a little bit of getting used to for some people. And the reason is that we tend to sit sometimes for long hours, early in the morning, late at night, and it's easy to get sleepy. And so keeping your eyes open means that you're taking everything in. You're just not processing it in the same way. Your attention is, once again, is turned inward. And so you're looking about 3.5, 4 feet in front of you. And it's what's called a soft gaze. So you just let it go out of focus. It's not shutting anything out, but not chasing after anything either. So that's the body. Now, what do you do with your mind? Zazen, as many other of the meditative traditions, begins with the breath as the point of focus. And if you think about it, it makes sense. I mean, the breath is always accessible. Right? Whether you're sitting formally, you're walking, you're sitting on the subway, you're having a difficult conversation, you can always return to your breath, which means you can return to your body, you can return to this moment where your life is happening. Because what we begin to see as we begin to practice zazen is that most of the time we're not present, right? We go back to the past, which no longer exists. We go forward into the future, anticipating, worrying. It does not exist yet. And in the meantime, our lives, which are happening in this moment, pass us by. I remember when I was explaining, to my father what I was doing in a Zen monastery, what I wanted, why I wanted to make my life there. This is what I said to him. I don't want to live half my life, a quarter of my life, a tenth of my life. I want to be here for all of it, regardless of what it brings. I want to be able to look back and say, I was there for it. This is really what zazen helps us to do. To realize that there is no other time but this time. That there's no other person, better version of us that will be happier than this one. That there is no other circumstance, no other situation that will give us what we're looking for. That everything we need is already right here. And so the breath is the anchor for our attention, right? So that we can gain insight into ourselves, into our lives. And so during a period of zazen, we commit to being with the breath fully. Every ounce of our being, every cell in our bodies, every thought of our minds is breath. And because that is sometimes difficult, because the breath can be subtle, we will count it. That's a little bit of an aid to help us notice if we're on the breath, if we're distracted. And so when we begin sitting, we take an inhale, regular inhale, and we silently count 1. exhale, 2. Inhale, 3. Exhale, 4. And we keep going until we get to 10. When we get to 10, we start back at 1. And we do this not so that we can get to 10. We do this to be present with our breaths and to notice when we're taken away by a thought, a sensation, an emotion. And so when we notice that happening, we will see the thought, grouping all experience under thought. We will set it aside and we will come back to the count of 1. That is the commitment that we make with ourselves. This means that the first time you sit down to meditate, you may not get past 2. Or the first week, or the first month, or months. That's okay. Once again, the point is not the counting. The point is to return time and time again to breath, building concentration, building mindfulness, building equanimity. Concentration is the sharpening factor of our awareness. It is really that muscle that when we notice we've gotten distracted, we bring ourselves back. That's concentration, the ability to put your mind on one point and to keep it there. And when it's not there, to bring it back. Mindfulness is the seeing factor, is what allows you to tell the difference between your breath and a thought. Equanimity is balance, is the balancing factor of our awareness. And it is the quality that allows us to ride the waves of our minds. You know, sometimes people think equanimity means that we're always fine and unmoving, unemotional. Equanimity simply means you know how to ride the wave of your mind, of an emotion, knowing that it will pass. And so it doesn't mean that there are no waves, but that you know how to ride them. And thus, the mind remains stable. And bringing those 3 aspects of our awareness, concentration, mindfulness, and equanimity, the mind becomes more open, better able to see clearly, right? It gains insight and therefore wisdom. All of this we're doing as we sit, simply counting our breaths. And so once again, you begin sitting, you place your attention in your hara, that point I mentioned, around the navel, simply to gather your attention. And I usually focus on that point, to focus on my breath. I just focus on the rise and fall of my abdomen. And then inhale, count 1, exhale, 2. And you keep going. You notice a thought, takes you away, you see it, set it aside, come back to the count of 1. If you get nothing else in this instruction besides those 3 steps, see a thought, let it go, and come back, you could do just that for the rest of your life and never exhausted. Because will you ever reach a point where you can just say to yourself, I'm too mindful, I'm too present, now I better dial it back? I hope, I hope that you never say that. The Buddha, his main form of meditation was following the breath. He called it the gateway to nirvana, the gateway to enlightenment. So we could be with this practice really for the rest of our lives and never reach its bottom. And so that is really the practice. Counting the breath, seeing a thought, returning. If you, in a period of zazen, let's say half an hour, you get distracted 100 times, that's 101 opportunities to return to awareness, to presence. So from that perspective, you can't really go wrong with meditation. When you let go of judging, whether you're doing it well or badly, whether you're thinking or not thinking, when you really just want to see what is happening in your mind, then all of it can wake you up. And then with time, you begin to learn how to work with thoughts, because there are thoughts that are just noise and need to be let go of. And there are thoughts that need to be worked with, right? The stuff of our lives. And therefore, the importance of working with a teacher. Because this is a type of meditation that is solitary. Even when we sit in a group, it's not guided. It is really silent meditation. And so you're really just grappling with yourself, with your mind, with your thoughts, pleasant thoughts, very difficult thoughts sometimes, with discomfort, pain, emotional, physical. And so it helps to have guidance. But to begin, commit to spending a few minutes each day just sitting quietly. If you don't have the stuff yet, don't worry. Just take a chair, take a cushion, sit on the floor, and commit for 5 minutes every day to just be with yourself in silence. Remind yourself of what brought you to look for a path in the first place. That voice that perhaps was telling you there has to be more to life than what I'm seeing. Trust that voice and know that all of what you need, as I said before, is right here. So it only needs time and space to be uncovered, to be revealed. And so if you have 5 minutes, sit for 5 minutes. If you have 10 minutes, 20 minutes, wonderful, use that time. But do it every day, to really make the practice of zazen part of your everyday life. And trust that the reason this is being taught still after 2,600 years is because it has something to teach us. It has something to offer us in 21st century life. That what the Buddha saw about suffering and the end of suffering is real and universal. Is not Buddhist per se, it's just the system he used coheres. And so people have taken it over generations and offered it in this way. But this is not the purview of Buddhism. It is simply part of being human. And so I hope that you'll feel encouraged to join the probably millions of people by this point who have sat down turn inwards and have seen without a doubt that their minds are naturally bright, cognizant, aware, and vast.